In this lesson, we'll take a look at the PTX workflow in Mudbox and how we can use it to paint textures on our models without requiring any UVs at all. So traditionally, when we're working with our models and we start to paint them, we're going to be requiring UVs so that Mudbox knows how to actually apply the painted texture onto the model. So it's sort of an unwrapped version of our colored model. Now this can create some issues where we have to change the UVs and then we have to change the texture. It also takes time to do the UVs. And so PTX is a really great solution for painting models, and we don't have to worry about UVs at all. And it's actually available here in Mudbox. So let's take a look at this. This is actually lesson 12 start if you want to use this project file. And there's a couple of pieces of geometry in here. This is the T-Rex_PTX example, and you can see I've got a material on it, but I don't have any paint layers currently on this. And so if we go into our UV view, we don't have any UVs. So let's say we want to start painting directly onto this model without having any UVs. Now the first thing that we need to do to set up our model for PTX painting is to just go down to the base level here. Let me select this guy and go all the way down to level 0. All right, and now we're going to go up to Mesh and go to PTX Setup, and we'll select this. Now you'll see this little grid come on your screen. You may also have this little window pop up, and this will give you some directions on what exactly you're doing. And this setup is really, really easy. All we're doing is visually looking at this grid, okay, and then we're increasing or decreasing the resolution using these two buttons. Okay, and then we'll look at in a second how we can actually change this based on the selection. So right now we'll look at this, and you can see if I decrease this, you can see how the grid gets very blurry, and so we want to get that a little bit sharper, so we'll increase this. All right, and let's just increase it maybe to that point. You can see how these are maybe a little bit more blurry than something like back here where we maybe have a little bit more room. Okay, now we can also define the resolution by a face selection. So if we were to go in and select the faces, let's get a lasso, and let's say we wanted to devote a little bit more resolution to the head. We can come in and select the faces of the head, and now if we increase that, you can see that sharpen up on the head. So now we're able to devote more resolution up here on areas that are more important versus maybe areas that are less important back here. Maybe the tail is not as important, so we can come in here, select those faces, okay, and let's kind of deselect those. Let me deselect those. There we go. And then we can come in here and decrease that. Okay, and that'll actually put less emphasis, less resolution here on the tail. So we can really dial it in based on the selection of faces. Now when we're done, we just need to hit done. Okay, and this is actually setting up a resolution based on the individual faces rather than a sort of unfolded version of this. Okay, so we're talking about texels based on the individual low-res faces. Then we can go up to our higher level and start painting. Okay, now we're still going to be working with paint layers. Okay, so let's jump up to the highest level, go to our paint tools, and just real quickly come in here, and you can see I can still call this something, T-Rex color. Okay, and you can see that we now have under Save As the ability to save PTX files. So we can save 8-bit, 16-bit, and then floating point PTX files. We'll just go ahead and do an 8-bit. We can also still use any of the channels that we're using. All of that painting functionality is still there, and we're doing this without any UVs. So we'll say OK to that. Now we'll jump over here into here. So let's hover the cursor over and hit up to load that in. And so now we can just start painting. So we can take our paintbrush and get whatever kind of color that we want here and start painting. You can see I can really quickly drop some color in. We're getting still nice resolution here we would normally get with a nice big texture map. So we can come in here and paint through this. Okay. So I'll just go ahead and real quickly drop this in. And do the same sort of things that we did with the other T-Rex. Kind of drop this color in, and then we can get some variations here. Kind of paint along the base. You can use all the stamps and stencils and all the functionality that we have working with the painting with the UVs. Alright, and we get maybe a variation of that. And let's actually desaturate it a little bit, give it a little bit more green. Okay, we can start to get different stamps and start to work in some color. And just do whatever painting we want to do. And again, if we wanted to use our stencils, we could come back over here and use our stencils. So get any of those stencils that we want to use. Alright, and come in here, use our projection. And let me look at this stencil here real quick. Don't want to invert that. And so just as an example, we'll come in here and just real quickly paint through this so we have something to see. So we can add a gray to this. So whatever you want to do to paint up your model. Let me just go ahead, and I'm going to pause this as I just do a little bit more painting so it's not quite so tedious here, and we'll come right back in a second. Alright, now that I've got a little bit more paint on there, let me go ahead and turn off the stencil. So you can see I've get the resolution based on the resolution that we set. So getting some very sharp results up here on the face where we've set a high resolution. Down here on the back though, you can see that the result is a little bit more blurry. That's because we've dedicated less resolution to that tail section from the way that we set that up. Okay, so come in here, we can add multiple layers if we want to. We can export these layers as PTX files. So we could come in and call this Rex color, and you can see that it actually has its own file type there. We can save that out. Okay, and we also have options here in our preferences for working with PTX, where we want to save the PTX textures with our .mud file, save mesh data in the PTX files, and so forth. Okay, so this is a really great solution for being able to really quickly start to get some paint onto our mesh, to really quickly dial in resolution based on different parts of the mesh and not have to worry about UVs. So this is a really great addition to Mudbox. But let's say that we now want to use our PTX texture. We want to actually transfer it to a UV based layout. So at this point now, for some reason we want to actually have the UVs. Maybe it's taken this long for them to get done, and we've been doing our painting on our mesh up to this point. And so now we need to transfer this to UVs. Now we can actually do that very quickly. So let's take a look at this. We've got another mesh in this scene file. This is the T-Rex_UV. And so if I go ahead and turn that on, and let me select this, and you can see that it actually has those T-Rex UVs associated with it. So all we need to do at this point, and if I turn off the PTX, you can just see, that this T-Rex UV doesn't have any textures associated with it. Okay, and so what we can do is, let me turn both of these on here. We'll go up to Maps, Extract Texture Maps, New Operation, and we'll use this Transfer Paint Layers. Okay, let me go ahead and see if we can see everything. And this is going to be very similar to when we looked at working with our vector displacement maps. It's going to have a very similar look for it. And then also when we start to do some of our map extraction, this is where we're going to come to. But right now we'll concentrate on transfer paint layers. So we're going to transfer paint from one model to another. The target is going to be the one with our UVs. So we can add selected, or we can just add all and get rid of everything else. Okay, so T-Rex UV is going to be our target. We want to make one map for all targets. For the source, we will use our T-Rex PTX and remove that. Now we can choose to use ray casting or subdivision. Okay, I'm going to choose the samples. You can see that we've got samples for furthest outside. So this is just taking this casting rays out to search for the data. The image properties for the size, we can make this a 2K map. Okay, and then we want to transfer all paint layers, visible layers only, or current layers only. We only have one layer, so we're just going to be transferring one layer. And then on the target for our T-Rex UV, do we want to replace existing or add to existing? And we don't have any existing paint layers. So let's go ahead and extract and see what happens. So let's go ahead and hit extract. So now it's going to go through that process of calculating where the texture would be from that PTX model, where it would be on the UV based model, and create a flat UV based texture for us, as if we would have painted that on the UVs. So it's going through and calculating here. So this PTX workflow, you can render it in RenderMan, Maya Hardware 2.0. It's growing in popularity, and it really is nice because you don't have to do that tedious UV layout, and you can really concentrate more on the actual textures. You don't have to worry about a lot of texture maps, things like that. So Disney uses this. I think Bolt, they used it a lot on Bolt as one of the first films. And so it's a really powerful workflow, and it's integrated here into Mudbox. So let's go ahead and let that finish calculating. Alright, so it says it's done here. So let's go ahead and turn off our PTX version, the visibility of it. And now we can see that we have a texture that looks very similar to what we had before. If we take a look in our UV view, you can see that that texture is now actually based on those UVs. So we can go in with our paint layers, and these are traditional paint layers, not PTX, and we can start doing any sort of painting on that. Alright, so that's how we can get our PTX texture transferred over onto a more of a UV based approach. Now, just as a quick tip, if you have something that already has a UV based texture and you try to go in and do your PTX setup, so let's say we take this mesh and take it down to 0, and then we try to go in and do our PTX, it's going to tell us that we already have paint layers. What do we want to do with the existing layers? Do we want to delete them, or we can actually convert them to PTX layers? So if we do that, we can go ahead and proceed. Okay, and then we can increase our resolution, let's say. We'll call it done. Just as we did before with our setup. Let that go ahead and calculate, and that'll actually convert that paint layer back to PTX, and we can continue doing your PTX painting on that. So you can go back and forth between your PTX and your UV based texture maps as well. So now we have our PTX texture that was created from our UV based texture. So again, you can go back and forth. So make sure that you check out PTX painting here in Mudbox 2012. It's really going to save you a lot of time when going through and doing saving time on doing UVs and working with a number of texture maps, and see how you can integrate it into your workflow. A great addition here in Mudbox. So in the next lesson, let's go ahead and take a look at integrating Mudbox with Photoshop. So we'll take a look at that next.